My mother-in-law is the type of person who just exudes excellence. And it's not that anybody has placed standards and expectations on her, but she just feels this innate desire to do and say all that is right and good. In the Enneagram world, we would call this a type 1. Now, as you can imagine, if this God-given desire for perfection is not paired with the gift of grace and mercy, it could cause a lot of problems for her and her relationships. My mom is the type of person that can walk in a room and naturally sense the needs and desires of other people and then instinctively works to meet those needs. She has an incredible God-given desire to serve other people. In the Enneagram world, we would call this the type 2. Now, like any of us, if the type 2 does not first find their value and worth in Christ, in their creator God, then they can fall into people-pleasing tendencies, not even realizing that they're trying to get their own needs met. And these are real valid needs of being loved, appreciated, and valued. My business coach has this way about him that he can speak right to your heart and just grip you and draw you in. He is incredibly ambitious, very successful in what he does. And in the Enneagram world, we would call this a type 3. As he realizes, if he doesn't tap into his spiritual nature and trust in God, he can run himself ragged. One helpful thing to understand about ourselves is where our center of intelligence is. For instance, the Enneagram type 4 is very much centered in their feelings, and that means that they navigate this world largely based on their feelings. This leads toward an innate desire to express themselves, their uniqueness, in a very authentic way. However, because they are very focused on expressing themselves authentically, they acutely recognize their differences. And sometimes this can lead them to believe that they don't belong. And so it's most essential for an Enneagram 4 to seek and find their sense of belonging first in Christ, because he is the one that has created them. He is the one that has chosen them, and he is the one that has accepted them. And to remember that when they don't feel like they fit into this world, they do fit in with their creator. My dad is the type of person that if he needs to make a decision, he'll go ahead and research all the information that he can, and then he'll make a decision using reason and logic. In the Enneagram world, we would call this a type 5. Now, having gone to seminary and understanding that if we get stuck in our patterns of thinking using our reason and logic, we can come to very different conclusions. And while those conclusions may seem to be opposing, they actually represent different aspects of the truth. And so it's especially important for an Enneagram 5 to remember that God's reasons are sometimes outside of our ability to reason. And sometimes God asks us to do things that doesn't make sense to us. Some of my closest friends have been Enneagram 6s, and it's because they are so steady, dutiful, and loyal. They are some of the hardest working people you'll know, and they are very, very structured. And so they tend to think through all the possible outcomes for a situation and have plan A, B, C, and D already in place. Now, the Enneagram 6 needs to learn to find their security in God, because as you know, life can be unpredictable. And so they need to learn to trust God with all the outcomes that could happen. So I'm an Enneagram 7, and I would say the greatest aspect that 7s bring to the space is energy and joy. And I'm sure that you all can see the passion that I have in life. And one of our greatest strengths is positivity. But the liability with that is our unwillingness to stay in a place of discomfort or pain. We tend to run and just find anything to do other than feel uncomfortable or feel emotional pain. And so the biggest lesson that God has had to teach me is to learn how to hold both joy and sorrow. Joy in one hand and sorrow in the other, and just allow the Lord to comfort me during those sad times in life. I had the privilege of working for and learning from a healthy type 8 female. And this was such a privilege because type 8s are very tender-hearted, and they have the ability to lift others up into their greatness and lead others into success. And we don't often get to see this side of the Enneagram 8 because they usually project strength and leadership and stability, but they are the most likely to stand up in the face of injustice. Sometimes the tender heart and intentions of a type 8 can be lost for their intense drive and passion to be change makers. Sometimes their efforts come out sideways when they're not in alignment with themselves and God. The type 9 is called the crown of the Enneagram, and they can be difficult to type because they look so different from one another. And I think the reason why this is because their internal motivation is for peace and harmony, and this extends to their environment. So they are most likely to get along to reduce any relational tensions. So we call them self-forgetting because they tend to merge with the people around them and forget their own thoughts, feelings, and desires and motivations. I love working with the Enneagram 9s because when they realize their own power and their own inner strength, they will stand up. And when they stand up, it is with compassion and with gentleness. And so if I had to describe an Enneagram 9, I would describe it as quiet strength.